Great. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This webinar will be a technical webinar today on twins technical developments. It will be 1 hour presentations from our side, and this will be followed by a 30 minutes question and answer session where you can, during the meeting, during the webinar, if you want, you can drop your questions in the chat or write them down for yourself for later. So first of all, I need to excuse us from Jens, who unfortunately can't join the webinar today. He had a small incident in traffic. No worries, he's fine, no accidents, but just very unfortunate delays. So I will start with the introduction. My name is Åsa Dahlborn, and I will then be followed by the technical lead at Toyota, Jose, and the senior developer, Adrian, who will take us through the technical updates of Twin. Great. So we have a lot of things to cover, so I think we really need to start on time. Jose, please, would you start with the first slide? Great. So the agenda today, we will first go through very few updates about the Twin initiative from my side. Then I will give it over to Jose. He will go into Twin in depth, a small recap for those of you who have been involved, maybe attended the first webinar or have had a look on what's going on in terms of the technical developments of Twin. Then we will dive into an educational case of study. You will see some Twin hands-on, and of course, you will get to know what's next. Great. So Jose, please, the next slide. So I will be starting with a very short updates, just 5 minutes, because this is really a technical webinar, so I don't want to take too much time on this. But we have had some very exciting developments also on the non-technical side lately. In May, for example, we launched the Twin Foundation together with the Trademark Africa, the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, the Chartered Institute of Export and International Trade, the World Economic Forum, and the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation. And we actually had the honor of Tony Blair to give a speech on this launch, which you can find online on Twin's YouTube channel. We can share all the links later. And sorry, can you please mute yourselves? Yeah, sorry. I think I can also do this actually. Anyway, so the role of the Twin Foundation is really to oversee the open source development, drive all the public partnerships, and engage governments. And you can keep an eye on these two websites where we will continue to publish everything. And I mean, the webinar today is also really part of the public commitment we have to provide visibility into our work. Please, the next slide, Jose. Sorry, yeah, exactly, the TLIP. I just want to say shortly, maybe many of you know already, but everything that has to do with the Twin Foundation actually started in Kenya with the Trade and Logistics Information Pipeline. This has been going on for a while, but we are now integrated to the Kenyan single window system, providing access of trade data to many different, I think 38 different agencies. We are also now integrated with the Kenyan Port Authority, and the ecosystem is really vibrant. It continues to develop in Kenya, and the Kenyan government has now also reached out to neighboring countries to bring them on board on this initiative, which is powered by Twin as well. Please go say the next slide. Thank you. And so TLIP was where it all started, but we have many more projects in this ecosystem using the Twin technology, which is evolving around us, and we're learning so much from all of them. So just to quickly give you some examples, we have the border trade demonstrators we've been working with in the UK. We're still working with the Cabinet Office and the UK government to integrate Twin into the border administration. And we're also working with some major ports and government agencies. We have the virtual watchtower network, which is shippers that are tracking containers and sharing statuses across ecosystems. And this is driven by Rice University in Sweden. We have the Mission project, which is a big consortium of around 30 actors, including some of the major ports in Europe. And here, Twin will be tested in a use case with all these partners in the port of Trieste. We also have the work in Holland through the Resolve project in the port of Rotterdam, where we will link up with Kenya for fresh produce. Yes, and then just one of the last updates, then I will give over to the technical updates here. But last week, we actually launched a partnership with GLIFE. As you can see here, GLIFE stands for the Global Legal Identifier Foundation, which issues legal entity identifiers, so-called LEIs. And they have been already working for 10 years, providing identities to companies in the financial sector. And what we want to do is that we want to connect to this ecosystem and good work they've been doing and link it to the Twin ecosystem of supply chain use cases. They already have 3 million entities registered globally. So with the partnership now with Twin, we want to expand the use cases for GLIFE members as well as the Twin members. And yeah, basically merge these two ecosystems and support each other. The next steps here in this partnership is that we have agreed to test how we can do the technical integration so people can really move between these two ecosystems seamlessly. Thank you, Jose. I saw you were a little bit quick there, but now I'm done with the non-technical updates. I will give it over to my colleague Jose and dive into the technical part. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Osa. And now we are going to enter into details about the Twin technology, and specifically today we are going to recap what we gave in the last webinar, but also give more details, and particularly with these more details, particularly in the data exchange part. In the data exchange components, we are going to develop an educational case of study where you can understand how actually data exchange or trade lanes can be built using Twin. But starting from the beginning, so if you remember the principles that are guiding the architecture of Twin is that we want to create the technology, the substrate that allows to implement value chain ecosystems, and for doing that, there are two very important aspects: is the decentralization and self-sovereignty. That's in the ethos of IOTA itself, but it's also, of course, in the ethos of Twin. And for that, it is important to remark that we need different pieces, different core principles, and you are seeing them there. So we need the capability of discovering who are the participants in these ecosystems. We need the capability of authenticating the participants. We need verifiable data because there is self-sovereignty, so each participant is recording its own data, and then later this data has to be shared, so there should be some commitment to that data, and this is where DLT comes into play. But also we are talking here about keeping your data for yourself, so there should be rights management that regulate who can get access to your data, and this is done through policies. But of course, for participation and following the DLT principles is that you need a node. But in our case, this node, this software agent, which is the Twin node, is more than a DLT node. It includes a DLT node, but other software layers that allows you to capture all this data and then to share all this data with other participants. And of course, in order to participate, there is a need for having governance. So who can participate, under which condition? And this is where the trust framework comes into play. So there are different pillars here that are guiding the Twin architecture. That's pretty important for you to understand why we have this architecture and not other architecture. And the three main technologies that are supporting that architecture, you need to understand and remember, are decentralized identity, the distributed ledger, and the data spaces. So these three pillars, these three technologies are key. And the developments that have been experienced in the last 5 years around these technologies is what we are applying here. Of course, supported by other technologies that are well developed. So data store, object store, etc., are technologies that are there. You can store big amounts of data very, very easily in a very commoditized way. So you need to remember different concepts, the ecosystem concept, the participant, who are the actors that provide or consume data. The trust anchors are the ones that give, trust and allow to attest over for the participants, but over other elements that we will discuss during this webinar. And then there is important point here, the compliance credentials. So the compliance credentials are credentials that say, yes, you can participate in this ecosystem. Yes, your asset can be part of the ecosystem, so on and so forth. So it is like the stamp, it is the attestation that allows you to participate. Then there is the twin node, which is the software that will allow you to participate in this ecosystem. And we added in the last version of the white paper the Twin Data App. So the Twin Data App is an extended component that you can inject into your node and provide additional APIs or additional functionality that is specific to your application. And this is pretty important because here in Twin we are providing the substrate for implementing this supply chain ecosystem, but then there is going to be some logic that it could be very, very specific to your use case. And this is the Twin Data App concept comes into play. And particularly, we will discuss later the concept of Twin Data Space Connector App, specifically for data sharing customization. And having this in mind, you will see here the overall architecture. The architecture implies that each participant is using a twin node for all capturing all the data they are going or they plan to share with other participants. That's in principle the idea. And capturing this data is also supported by data commitments that are within the twin node, particularly in the infrastructure level, in the DLT layer level. Of course, these participants, they need to be announced to the world, and this is where the catalog comes into play. So in the catalog, you will discover who are participants, what data they are offering to other participants, and what are the rights to get access. So what are the policies that regulate the access by other participants to that data? And of course, each participant is identified by the centralized identity because this decentralized identity allows the other participants to verify the data or the interactions they are doing among them, without having a central repository or a central identity manager. No, here in this architecture, there is no a central identity manager. Each participant has its own identity. That identity is registered in the IOTA layer as a DAD IOTA, and that allows these interactions to happen in a trustworthy manner. Each node, of course, has a very important component, which is the data space connector. So the data space connector allows the exchange of data among these actors. The exchange, it can be just done in a publish subscribe mode, or can be just in a pool mode in which you do a request and you ask for a certain data element and you get that data element. And of course, on top of that, you have applications. And there are two types of applications that are built from the beginning for the node. And that's one type of application. But there are applications that they are existing applications. And we want to be, if you remember the previous slide, to be evolutionary and not revolutionary. And this is where a twin adapter comes into play, because a twin adapter can just be a software layer that consumes the data from these systems and provides the data to the data space connector and finally into the node. And once comes into the node, it can be shared with other actors. That is a the principles. So remember, you have the node, you need to deploy your software there that would allow you functionalities for your supply chain or value chain ecosystem. You have the data space connector for exchanging the data. You have rules, you have policies that regulate the access to the data. And then you need to publish who you are and what are your assets to the catalog. And through the catalog will allow others to discover each other. And through the ledger, the IOTA ledger, you will be able to share data, but also to verify that data. Okay, so these are the main layers, and on top of that you have applications. And an important thing is that the twin node is a modular one, so it is not necessarily a monolith. So you can deploy multiple microservices that can be part of the twin node, and particularly you can deploy your own custom components to the node that can reuse the infrastructure that the node is putting in your hands. So the node, it can be this slide can be complex one, but I think it is not that complex if you think that what you have essentially in your node is the capability of capturing documents, events, or items, digital twins, essentially, of these items and the digital twins of documents, and also the events that are happening around those, I would say, supply chain assets. So there can be products in the digital product passport. It can be consignments in a transportation or in a international trade scenario. They can be shipments in, in a transportation scenario. And then the twin node allows you to capture all that information, and that information can be stored in different data stores. You can configure the data store you want. So and then, of course, you can register certain data commitments in the DLT ledger. So essentially, you can verify the data that you are sharing with others. You can do time stamping so that the actors can have additional trust. And of course, you can tokenize. You can tokenize, for instance, documents if you want to transfer them. And these are the key elements. And on top of that, you have platform services. One important platform service is the twin engine, because the twin engine is the element, the component that allows to instantiate other components, including custom components. And then you have the data exchange services, the services that allow you to exchange data with others. And then on the left-hand side, you have enabling and federation services, which are the services that allow you to define the governance of the ecosystem, the onboarding of participants in the ecosystem, and so on and so forth. And on top of that, as I said, the application. So this slide even can be seen as complex if you think that you have ways of capturing your supply chain data. You have platform components that allows to support this. You have infrastructure services for databases, DLT, etc., and the connectors. And then you have the data exchange services. And finally, the enabling and federation services to support the onboarding of participants and the discovery of the participants and the trust framework around and the governance around your ecosystem. So this is the summary. So you see here what I've been seeing, what I've been explaining, summarize. So these are this is the technology, but if you ask me about what are the use cases, I would say that they can be summarized in these 3 points. It is document and data exchange in international trade with all the aspects that can have that, because there is a transportation aspect, there is a compliance aspect, even there is a trade finance aspect. So there are many different aspects here. And then there is what I call environmental and sustainability compliance, which leads you to a circular economy in the end. And the most prominent case that everybody in the industry is talking about is the digital product passport with the different flavors the EU has defined in the SPR, its own flavor, but the UNCFAC with the UN Transparency Protocol recommendation 49 is defining its own flavor, but in the end, it's a key instrument is the DPP. And with Twin, you can implement DPP as well. And also there is this supply chain visibility where the different actors need to exchange data in transportation and in different domains, in and optimization, because if you are able to share data, you can create applications on top that can optimize. So these are the three main use cases. And people are asking as well, IOTA has been working a lot with digital product passports. We work with EBSI, with the EU pre-commercial procurement 1 year and a half ago. And with Twin, would you be able to implement digital product passport use cases? And the response, of course, is yes. But I am not saying yes because of marketing. I'm saying yes because if you check the DPP systems in the EU level, there are 8 aspects of standardization that are being defined by Sensenelec. And fortunately, we already have the drafts of the specs. And if you check the drafts and you check the specs in all the different aspects, so Twin has a response. So for instance, if the EU wants access rights management, security, and business confidentiality, we are implementing these rights management components. And through W3C ODRL policies, you can define for your DPPs your access rights. But for instance, it says instant interoperability, and it is mentioned linked data. Twin supports linked data natively. All our APIs, key APIs, support linked data with different linked data vocabularies. But for managing the digital twin of your product, you have the auditable item graph component that we explained in the first webinar. So if you check each of the aspects, you can see a perfect or a very, very interesting mapping with Twin. And for instance, the DPP, the standard says data exchange protocol. We have a data space connector, and that data space connector allows the exchange of JSON LD content. Data storage archiving, we implement in our infrastructure services, data storage archiving and the connectors. Data authentication, reliability, and integrity. Of course, we are in IOTA. We know a lot about that. We know how even you can use the ledger to maximize reliability and integrity. And we have this connection between Twin nodes are natively connected to the IOTA ledger. And then you have APIs. And SenseLNL has defined some APIs for the DPP. But with a Twin data app, we can implement those APIs in our Twin node and make our DPP application, DPP system living in a Twin node. So from the best of our knowledge, Twin is fully ready for this DPP system implementation as per the current SenseLNL standards. And in future webinars, we will show real educational case of study. The specs are now under public review, and of course they may evolve, and we would need to converge towards them. This is a word, but Twin can support the DPP as well. This is the message I would like to give to you here today. And let's do a little bit of architectural zooming in the data exchange, because I've been talking about the federated catalog, the Twin catalog that allows you to register the different assets you have. I've been talking about the data exchange, the data space connector, but someone would ask me, well, give me more details, show me the code. Yes, I can do it. So essentially, we need to take into account the following aspects, the following definitions in data exchange. So one is the catalog, which is the place where different entries are registered. And the entries that are registered in the catalog are of different types. The most important entry is the participant, so that you are a participant. that you are an entity that has been cleared up, and you can participate as a data provider or as a data consumer. But then there are other three elements that can be published. So there are data resources. Data resources are data sets. So I may say I expose data which are documents of type, are veterinary certificates, and are I would say represented using this vocabulary. So this is a data resource. It's a data set. It's the data that you are exposing to other parties. But a data set is the data set. So you are not saying how you can get access to the data set. And this is where it comes the service offering. But the service offering is how, as particular view of your data set, and how do you offer it to the rest of the world. So it is. This is following the Gaia X ontology, but it is similar to DCAT, the W3C DCAT version 3, where you have a data set and a data service. So the data set is the data, and the data service is the view and the mechanism you use to get access to that data. Even the same data set could be expressed in different formats or in different ways. And both data resources and service offerings, they have policies. And the policies define who can get access to what under which conditions. And this is defined the ODRL language. And this is the key point, because you need to provide in the catalog data resources, service offerings, and then the policies. And then there is a component, the data space connector, that will honor all you declare in your catalog. But the data space connector, as I said, might need additional support from your specific needs for your specific application. So there cannot be a universal data space connector. There can be, for certain aspects, yes, but for other aspects that are more custom to your application, this is where it comes, the data space connector application. So the data space connector application is an extension, that you can deploy in the data space connector that can handle particular data elements that you are interested in. And data space connector application is one component that you deploy additionally in your Twin node. And you can see here the details about the data exchange, because the data exchange implies that there is some data that is coming through to the data space connector, through the data plane. I will show later how this data comes. The data comes, and then the data space connector will perform the proper authentication, will test the authentication, will test all the common stuff, and then might delegate to a certain one or more data space connector applications that will react to the reception of the data. Of course, if someone is asking data that, let's separate. So one is when the data space connector receives data, and when the data space connector receives data, check that, of course, the participant is authenticated, etc., that it is a data provider, and then delegates into a data space connector app. But if the data space connector is inquired about data that it wants to get, that another actor wants to get access to, then the data space connector will go to the catalog, will check the corresponding service offering, and will check if the policies match. Because if the policies do not match, then, of course, the data space connector will not delegate to any application, will just reject the request. And that's important for you to know. But the other interesting point is one data space connector can propagate the data to another data space connector. And this is where subscriptions come into place. But nothing prevents that the data space connector app itself decides, okay, I'm going to propagate this piece of data through the internal logic that the data space connector app has to this other data space connector, because it might be interested in that data, or at least might need to have a reference to that data. And this is pretty important. I will show you more details in our educational case. So in essence, this is the APIs that are supported by the federated catalog. So in the federated catalog, you can register compliance credentials, and then for participants, service offerings, data resources, and data space connectors, because data space connectors also appear in the catalog. Why? Because you need to discover which are the endpoints that allows you to get information or send information to other participants. And then you can query the catalog. Okay, the catalog supports different kinds of queries for the different assets, and that would allow you to, discover the assets and get access to the data. And the APIs of the data space connector, it's interesting because essentially the data space connector is receiving activities. Activities just are like similar to social network activities, like I have created a new item, I have added something to this item, and you can imagine the item can be a consignment. What you add to a consignment is a document. So it is the activity stream. You will see later an example and you will understand. And then there is the data endpoint of the data space connector that allows you to get data actually, and there is a subscription endpoint that allows you to subscribe to data. Of course, for getting the data and for subscribing to the data, the policies should match. Okay, the policies of the corresponding service offering that you are trying to subscribe, they should match. There are different levels of maturity of this work. The data endpoint of the data space connector is under an RFC at the moment, and you can see the spec in our RFC repository, but the activity stream is implemented, and you can implement your own data space connector application and work with this. So now we're going to enter into an educational case of study for you to understand this. So imagine, well, this is it is based on a real case, but it is still very simple for you to understand. But imagine that we have a chicken exporter in Poland, and the chicken exporter is exporting the chicken meat to the United Kingdom. And of course, for exporting chicken, you are going to need some kind of phytosanitary certificate. Imagine that it is a veterinary certificate that needs to be issued by a government agency. In this case, there is a government agency in Poland that does do. And you are going to export with the help of a freight forwarder. So the freight forwarder is another business that is allowing you to get the transportation, etc., some custom clearance help, etc. And the idea is that you are a chicken exporter, you ask the veterinary agency for your veterinary certificate, and then once you have it, you share it with the freight forwarder, and then the freight forwarder, at some point in time, will share that certificate with the Food Standards Agency in the UK. So you can see here, that the regulation is forcing you to have this document, but also there are different actors that are appealing. So there are two government actors, these agencies, the Veterinary Agency and the Food Standards Agency, and there are two business. One is the exporter, and another business is the freight forwarder. And you can see different interactions. So government to business, because the veterinary agency needs to issue the veterinary certificate. Then business to business, because the exporter needs to share the consignment data and the documents, including the veterinary certificate, in this case, to the freight forwarder. And then the freight forwarder needs to share data with the Food Standards Agency. Of course, you can say, okay, this is more complex. Yes, we know this goes through inland transportation in Europe, and then goes to a port, and from a port, it's more complex. But let's try to focus on this case. And here you can see each participant and the data resources that are offered. So and the service offering. So you can see that the veterinary agency is providing data resources with the veterinary certificates and offers a service that allows to query the veterinary certificates by ID. And the permissions would go to exporters registered in Poland. So if you're a Poland exporter, if you know the ID of your veterinary certificate, you get that. The chicken exporter is, well, in this fictitious case, we are saying that it's offering the commercial invoice and the veterinary certificate, but also is offering information about consignments. It can be queried by ID, each asset, but of course gives permissions to the freight forwarder, because it has an agreement, or there is already an agreement, commercial agreement between the exporter and the freight forwarder. So the freight forwarder says in the catalog, okay, I share this data with you. So whenever you need this data, you can query that data in my data space through my data space connector. Then the freight forwarder is offering documents in general, because the freight forwarder has many customers, and has a permission that says, well, whenever there is consignments destination UK, that implies certain commodities, for instance, chicken, please share. The UK Food Standard Agency can get access to these documents, not to other documents that I am also offering, only to these documents. So the permission, so the right, is just for documents of veterinary certificate, type veterinary certificate, that with consignments are in the UK. So the destination, is the UK. Okay, so this you understand that you have a whole data set, then you have a service, and then you restrict in the service, which are the permissions. And well, in this case, the Food Standards Agency is not sharing, but it may share with other actors, so on and so forth. So here you understand what is needed. And here you will see more in detail the UML diagram with the different actors and how this actually works. So if I focus on the, for instance, let me focus on the, on the exporter. So the exporter is producing two different types of data resources, and it's using as well, of course, the data space connector of, for instance, the veterinary agency. Why? Because it needs to get access to the veterinary certificate. And the exporter is producing these data resources that actually are aggregated, are actually aggregated by a service offering maintained by the exporter. And this is the same for other actors. So here you have the data resources, you have the freight forwarder that has a data resource that is producing this data resource. And of course, these data resources are exposed always through a data space connector. So you have multiple service offerings, you have multiple data resources offered through a data space connector, and on top of that, you have the different service offerings. So, and of course, service offerings and data resources, they have policies. And this is for you to understand the key entities that they end up in the, in the catalog. So in the catalog, there are entities of this type. And in this educational case, this is what it is being modeled. And actually, this has been modeled in a repository that you can get access to, and you can play with all these entities and understand the whole picture. And as I said, the key thing to understand is that there are different actors. These actors are registered in the catalog as well, and this actor published 3 types of assets. Data resources, you can see the data resources that the exporter published the data resource with documents and with consignments, and then there are service offerings, okay? And these service offerings, that in this case we have the exporter service offering, well, it is missing here a line between the exporter and this service offering, but you can see that the exporter is also publishing this service offering that aggregates these data resources, and then not only the exporter is producing this data and is the owner of this service offering, but also is using other service offerings, etc., through the data space connector of other actors. So I think it's easier to follow in the picture rather than explaining, you know. But you see. So and you are seeing, okay, this is the model, but how this translates? Well, this translates in these JSON-LD pieces of code. So here is the information that you have in the catalog about the company. This is expressed using the GaiaX ontology. And here is a data space connector where you have the different endpoints. And here is a data resource. You can see here the metadata that describes the data resource. In this case, it's a JSON schema. And you can see here the service offering where this is the service offerings between the exporter and the freight forwarder. And this service offering between the exporter and the freight forwarder is an agreement between both. There is in the policy, there is an agreement between both. And you have here the permission that essentially says, yes, you can read, but there are some restrictions. So the destination country has to be the UK. And for instance, that the document type has to be a particular one. And all of these entities, they end up in the catalog, as I said. So in the end, when you need to do the data sharing, essentially, you are going to receive, so imagine that the veterinary agency already comes with a system, has a system that produces the veterinary certificates. So through a twin adapter, we'll provide the veterinary certificate or a reference to it to a data space connector. The data space connector will store that information, will, I would say, notarize the document, will calculate the fingerprint, etc., and then may inform other data space connectors that this document exists. So you can imagine the propagation from the veterinary agency to the exporter. The exporter then will inform the freight forwarder, and the freight forwarder will inform the UK FSA. And the interesting idea is that the data can remain at the source. So you don't need to propagate the actual document. The document can remain at the source. Only it is needed to know that the document exists. And that existence of the document through a fingerprint can be recorded on IOTA. And then later, when someone requests the document, for instance, if the UK FSA say, I want to see the document now, it will be able to do so. Why? Because it will call the freight forwarder, and the freight forwarder, again, will be able to provide the document because it will be able to get access to the document through the exporter, and so on and so forth. So, and of course, if someone wants to keep track of the document and the policy for sharing data allows you to retain the document itself, it could be done as well because the twin node offers these capabilities. So and here you see how the activity string would work in this case. And this is a key for the data space connector. So this is an activity of type add. This is encoded using the activity strings W3C standard. So there is an activity of type add. So here we are adding a new document. In this case, it's a veterinary certificate to a consignment that it is identified using the World Customs Organization standard with a global ID. And when this this payload is received by the data space connector, the data space connector will say, okay, this is a correct activity stream. Let's delegate to a data space connector app, and the data space connector app will say, okay, a new document, fine. Will capture the document metadata, will also associate the document with the consignment, and that will be done through the auditable item graph. There is a graph there that will be created and then will be registered. Also, entries in the IOTA ledger can be registered as well in order to keep track, of this new state of the consignment, and also even the document, it could be tokenized, whatever. But this is the key thing for doing data exchange. So as a summary, because I don't have more time, only 3-4 minutes before Adrian talks about concrete hands-on with Twin, more concrete. Just to summarize is that in order to do data exchange with Twin, you need a Twin node, you need a Twin data space connector, of course, you need a Twin data space connector app that handles the data. The data will arrive using the W3C activity streams, but take into account that the W3C activity streams is JSON-LD, so you can use different vocabularies. So here we are using the UNCFAC vocabulary, but if you want to use another vocabulary of products or whatever for the DPP, or you want to use EPCIS vocabulary because you are sharing events, that can be done. That can be done because it's JSON-LD and it is very flexible, the data space connector. And also, in order to share data, you need to offer that data to announce the availability of that data through the catalog. And there, you need to be a participant. And then you need to offer data resources, as it is seen here. You need to offer data resources. You need to offer service offerings that aggregates the data resources and offers the data through an API that typically will be incarnated by the data space connector. And you, of course, need a data space connector. And whenever an actor needs data from another actor, needs to go through the data space connector, needs to know what is the service offering, and ask through the data space connector, please give me the data that you are offered here. And the data space connector will check the permissions, will check the policies, the rights, policy defines in rights management, in order to see if you have permissions to do so or not. And finally, when you get the data, you may verify the data using the capabilities of IOTA, etc., because everything is backed with the identity of the different actors. So this is the summary. I think we are ready for transfer to. I will stop sharing. You can, of course, ask me later questions. It is not that easy to understand this at the beginning. And to Adrian with hands-on work.
Perfect. Excellent. I hope that all of you are excited after Jose talk into, okay, how can I make this on my own? How all of this technology, all of this infrastructure will be able for me. So I'm gonna show you a little bit of how to make this, of how to actually get your hands there with our technology. Um, just to verify, Jose, are you watching my screen now?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. First, I will walk you through the code base of the twin architecture because we have it as a layer approach from bottom to top, where each of the next block rely on the previous one. So at the beginning, we have a base layer where we have our fundamentals, our core utilities, and it allows us to have cryptography, to use translation of different languages, some standards like UNCFACT, DID, schema.org, and etc. So the other components can start using that as an overall. Then we have the components and connectors layers, which provide us with our infrastructure services. Everything related to databases, to blob storage, to telemetry, to bolt connectors, all of that. And you can see that a lot of them have like different configurations. This is because we allow every node to be set up the way you prefer. You might have already some databases or knowledge in some aspects, so you can configure very easy how or which you will use, and you don't care about anything else. The node itself will connect to that specific configuration that you desire, but I will get deeper into that later. Then we have the DLT connectors, which handles our blockchain integration, everything with NFT, wallets, gas station, all the DLT, IOTA related stuff. Then we have the building blocks, which are our business logic models. Already, Jose mentioned a lot of them: auditable item graph, auditable item streams, rights management, federated catalog. All of these are in the building blocks. And then we basically wrap up all of this in the engine that we have, the core and the REST server engine, which actually spins up and let the usage of all of this. We have the twin node that you will see in a short Docker container that actually have everything just for run and work. And we have some libraries for React, for Svelte, that helps the UI components. The twin node doesn't bring any UI, but we have some libraries that can help you. And the idea is that on top of all of this, we have some applications, but you can also create some applications that will grow the ecosystem. I will get deeper into one of them, that it's the playground, but I will come to that in a bit. Okay, so to know more about this, we have some open source resources, which is the website twindep.org, and also the GitHub. You can find all of the information about these packages, about these models. You can get deeper into them, understand how they work, and, well, how to configure them later. Okay, so how can I run a twin node local? First, find a twin node in Docker Hub, and there's the link. When they will share you the presentation, you'll find it there. Then check and edit the configuration variables, because depending on how you want to spin it, you'll have to modify it. We have some examples. If you want to connect to IOTA, if you want to connect locally, if you want to connect to AWS, we have some example variable configuration for each of them. And here you can see, for example, here, if you want to connect to AWS, you'll have to use these ones. But if you want to connect to Google File Store, you will have to use these ones, and so on and so forth. So I can, so yeah, just check them, download the sample document that works the best for you, adapt it as needed, and now you can run this Docker image with this simple command. Just run the image, you pass the configuration file that I just show you, and it will spin it up. It will guide you over all the things that it's doing. It creates an identity, it creates some mnemonics, it's gonna show you all the process that it's doing. The first time that you run it, it's important to check for a email and password that it's gonna create for you to authenticate, because a lot of the services that are provided needs authentication. So beware to capture that password when it's created the first time. And also you will have your identity and the mnemonics associated to this node. And the last point, just verify that they're running. You can point to the port that it's exposed. Here I exposed the 3000, so you can go to that and you'll see that you have some info endpoint, a health one, and a spec one. That this one, it's very useful. It actually gives you an open API specification for all the endpoints, and you can paste this one into Swagger or something like that, and you will get a full disclosure of how to use all the endpoints. And you have your Twin node running locally. Maybe you are not that familiar with, okay, using just the endpoints or having it run just as a server. So we have also a Twin Playground. This is an UI, an application that has its own UI, which run both the backend and the frontend to test a little bit and to play around with it. And let me show you. This is how the playground looks, and you can all the components that I show you in the first slide, you will have it here at your disposal to play around and to test and to dive deeper into how to use them, because they all at the end rely on REST API, so you can actually see how the payload is created and what it sends and what it returns and all of that. And here you can upload documents, get information from the documents, attest a document, mint some NFTs, transfer them, burn them, the auditable item graphs that Jose mentioned. You can create them, you can have some connections with them, you can associate a document with a person, and you can try all of what Jose explained before here without coding a lot. You just have to run it, and it's there for anybody to use it. And yeah, this the auditable item streams also, what Jose mentioned, like different pieces of a single item. But yeah, the idea is to have this open for everybody to run it and to spin it. They can run their own. They can use the one that we have already set up for the public. And this is also in the twindev.org and in the GitHub repositories. So feel free to check it out, download it, and try it. And just as an example, we have this playground spin up in AWS, but you can try it locally, of course, but if you want, you can push it to DigitalOcean or to Google services or whatever you want. It's very configurable, so that's very nice that you can actually set it up the way you want it. At the end, in AWS, we have an ECR that is deploying the container, the Docker container, as I show you in the second slide, and we configure it to have it a gas station, a Vault, an IPFS, a universal resolver, all in the same node. We choose RDS for the database and S3 for the blob storage. And well, it's connected, of course, to the IOTA DLT. And I can't see. And we
You
are
didn't know
using
that was
Cloudflare.
me?
we are using Cloudflare to publish, expose the domain, to use the load balancer. And this is an architecture that it's very easy to understand and very configurable. So you can have as many flavors of this as you want. And I think that's all on my side. I hope a lot of you will start using our technology and try it on and build more applications in the ecosystem, because that's at the end what we are building all of this.
Yeah, so thank you, Adrian. And last thing I would like to, before we enter into the questions, is about, well, we did the twin hands-on and entering about talking about what's ahead. So what we are doing at the moment. So, and we are, as you may know, you may guess, we are pretty busy. So we plan to release a 1.0 version of the RI white paper at the end of the year to I would say, have a stable version. But related to that is that we are writing a scientific paper to gain peer reviews of twin architecture. I think different journals will be interested because we think our work is unique in that regard. But more specific that affects everybody that it is listening to us today is we are creating a tangible community with a truly open source development model. So now it is open, all the code is open source, but we want to have all the governance and all the, I would say, live management of the roadmaps, backlogs, etc., but also the contribution, accepting contribution from external parties, etc. And this open source development model, this transition where we are going to have RFCs, all the I would say ceremonies and machinery that a really open source project needs at the end of the quarter to have this. It is also important to develop tutorials and blueprints on how to use the technology, and some projects that were mentioned, the UK, TLIP, Virtual Watchtower, are going to start to use the components this last quarter of the year. And with that experience, we plan to release more documentation that it is needed for people, for the community. And the rights management, well, refinement, and now our main development focus is in difficult parts. This is in the rights management and in the data space connector that needs the query and subscribe interfaces, and the centralization of the twin catalog that we already have, the decentralized storage component for having multiple copies of the catalog by the different nodes, but has not been integrated yet, and additional onboarding that it is needed. We are working also on onboarding tool, organizational identity tool, which is called Twin ID, that we will talk in future webinars. And the idea is that we are going to have another webinar by mid-January 2026 with different topics that we are thinking. One could be Twin ID, but tokenization, deep dive in DPP, deep dive in what we have explained today. So there are many opportunities for new webinars next year as long as we progress. But we want to show it to you here is that this is tangible progress that we are doing. The code bases are there, and initial use cases are appearing, and you can start understanding this with the educational use case. That, by the way, at the end of the slides, you will find the links to the data set with the different actors, the different data resources. You can play with that data set. And also there is a blueprint of a data space connector application there, and a data space connector that you can also run, instantiate, and see how things work. Even that That will be complemented with a screencast of that I will explain also and will make a little demo that will be available by the time you receive these slides. So now, Osa, I think it's time to go to the questions.
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Jose and Adrian, for your amazing presentation. And we have gathered some questions here in the chat. I will start with the first one. We have now around 25 minutes to go through questions, so please feel free to add more questions in the chat. Now is the chance. So we have a question here from Pascal, which is about VLAs. So the question is, as you know, VLA are based on KRI technology, in other words, AC/DC credentials, which already include a root of trust with QVLA issuer. Do you have already an idea of how this can be combined with the twin catalog, which is based on W3C's DIDs?
No, that's a very, very good question. And this is one of our ongoing projects that we started as part of the agreement with Clive. We have started the project to solve that issue particularly. And we are in different levels of discussion. So the ideal situation is where there is bidirectionality. So you come from a W3C DID DID IOTA, you can discover a DID WebEx that essentially is the one in the carry ecosystem, and also there can be a notary service that plays the role of bridge between both worlds, and a verifiable credential can attest that that relationship between a VLI and a DID. So we are managing at the moment different options. It has also implications in the QVI aspect as well. So sure answer is we are working on it, and we are with Clive discussing like 4 different options. Some of them are the ones that I have mentioned, but it is a very good point to be solved.
Thank you very much, Jose. And indeed, a very good question from Pascal. Thank you very much for that one. Then we have also from Pascal. I'm not sure if it's the same Pascal, because I think we might have 2 Pascal. There is also a question about how Twin interacts with existing trade finance systems, such as SAP Trade Finance, Finastra Fusion Trade Innovation, which is Fusion IT, Sorcomp, DOKA, China Systems, Exim Bills, or similar platforms. So is it possible to easily connect and ensure interoperability, or would existing processes and proven systems need to be completely replaced?
No, that's a very good question. And I think I am still sharing. So essentially, the key thing is the adapter layer. So we are not saying that existing systems should be replaced, but actually develop an adapter towards Twin. And this is the key point, because with this Twin adapter that can talk the data space connector, I would say API, I would say trade finance instruments like invoices or bill of ladings, etc., could be also be known at the Twin level. And once they are not at the Twin level, they can be tokenized, and so on and so forth. So you can keep your existing system. And this is something we are, for instance, doing also with an investment that we have done with Salus in trade finance, is that they have their own platform, they have their own marketplace, but then they develop an adapter that talks to Twin. In Twin, all the tokenization aspects, all the document management, etc., happens, and then keep this bidirectionality with the original system. That it is the idea. So there is no idea on replacing existing, but complementing and adapting to those to those systems, and with the additional benefit that you have the IOTA ledger ready. So not only the smart contracts provided by Twin could be used, but you could develop custom smart contracts, in the IOTA ledger, and through your adapter or through a specific Twin data app you deploy for your specific case, being able to use those smart contracts as well, and so on and so forth. So the short answer to the question is no. We are not pursuing, or we are not promoting replacement of existing systems, but complementing them, and that people start developing adapters.
Thank you very much, Jose. And that was actually a very good question, because I think this is one of a core principle of Twin, that it was, as you said, it was never about replacing systems, but to integrate with them and to complement each other. There was just a short question also there from Pascal in the same message, which is about the expected timeline for Twin to go live on the mainnet.
Yeah, I know that's a good question. So the current plan to be doing real transactions on the mainnet is end of Q4 with some use cases that are under the ones we control. Of course, at the moment, and Adrian knows better, at the moment, not at the moment, I don't know if at the moment, but in a few weeks, all the gas station integration, all the things that allow you to do actual transactions in the mainnet will be ready in Twin. And I think it's already, Adrian.
Yeah, indeed, it's already on mainnet. That actually answers another guy question. It's already in mainnet. The only thing that we are still testing, it's the verifiable storage, that it's one of the packages included, but all the other tests passed already.
So
It's
short
running
answer
on
now
mainnet.
is I correct myself. So in our cases, in the use cases that IOTA is developing, for instance, with the UK, the plan is to be live on mainnet in Q4. But at the moment, if you develop your use case, you can go issue transactions to the mainnet now. And actually, this is what will be done very soon as well by one of our partners, Salus, as I said. So yeah, so answer yes, the mainnet is under scope, and it's a target for us.
Great, that's really exciting news. And maybe just for clarification, because there was another question related to IOTA, which I will just take now. Maybe it makes sense. Konstantin, he was asking that if when we are talking about IOTA, does it mean that IOTA rebased has been fully integrated?
Yes. The response, the short answer as well is yes. We in the 6 or 8 months ago, we had two flavors, like the old Stardust and rebase, but now everything is rebase based. So it's the only ledger that we provide connectors to. Of course, other people may provide connectors to other ledgers, and that is open in the architecture, but the connectors that at the moment are open source and developed by us are the IOTA rebase ones.
Great. I can see the audience is very happy about this. There were a lot of nice reactions flying around here on the screen. So there was also a question about the real business opportunities right now. Are there any real business opportunities short term for open source developers, companies, and integrators? Or should we consider all this framework like a potential opportunity for a more distant future? Apart from the development of adapters for existing solutions?
Well, I mean, the opportunities are there, are multiple. So we have, as I said, the digital product passport. There is a big market there because it is EU regulation. So there is going a need for in many sectors that to support digital product to provide the DPP systems. So that's a clear opportunity, and you can use the existing software, and on top of the existing software, develop a DPP solution, as I said, in the different aspects in my previous. If you go to this, right? So Twin is ready for that. And another opportunity as well. Now the project is truly becoming open source to improve. So if you find a component that has a bug or whatever, and you can provide a pull request and improve the platform, and also use the platform. So there are opportunities there in the digital product passport in particular, but also new regulations are coming into place. So, for instance, the EU Deforestation Act that is going to be mandatory, demonstrate certain aspects of your products that are coming abroad regarding the EU Deforestation Act. It's another potential way of business development. There is the UNTP, the United Nations Transparency Protocol, that can be implemented using Twin. So there is a line of business. There is a line of business in knowing how to deploy. So Adrian saw an example in AWS, but how to deploy Twin nodes. There is a line of work as well in developing adapters for SAP, for instance, adapters for. So of course, it would need investment in understanding everything, but the business opportunities are there. Maybe it's not for tomorrow, but the DPP is going to be mandatory. I don't know if next year or the following. So in 1 year, you will be there. So there are opportunities for sure. For instance, we are pursuing opportunities around smart food chains, where the idea is to have better traceability in food and in packaging of food to minimize food waste. And use cases that can optimize delivery, for instance, depending on the best before date. And that can be done with the participation of multiple actors, and that Twin comes. So the sky is the limit. But of course, if you are a small developer, there is an initial investment, and maybe what you are going to do is not for the next month, is for the next year. So short answer, yes, of course.
Thank you very much, Jose. And it's great that you, after every answer, also provide the short answer so that we have the summary of it. And I will jump to another question here from Shahram, because it's also about a little bit how to deploy and the opportunities. He was wondering if, as IOTA Sustainable Developers Canada, if they want to become a Twin node and start building pilots on the platform, what are the first concrete steps, and who should we coordinate with on your side for the onboarding?
So essentially, maybe Adrian can respond this one. So I let you to Adrian. Maybe then I can complement.
Sure. I think, as I mentioned before, you can spin up your Twin node locally at the beginning and understand how all the endpoints work. Try to get your hands dirty on it a little bit. And probably when some pilots arrive, we also have a Twin ecosystem team that can help you on to onboarding, on trying to reach to different opportunities. But just get your hands dirty first.
Yeah, so our answer, yes, we can provide some support. We have not set up yet the channels for communication with the community, particularly Discord or similar, but they will be set up as part of this open source, really truly open source movement. And there we can provide support, but also the interesting thing is you start deploying and and etc., you will find improvement points and you can contribute, etc. But deploying in AWS, Google Cloud is easy, on-premise, in Kubernetes as well. And we didn't test in Azure, but I guess in Azure is not to be very, very difficult either. So pretty, I would say, a lot of possibilities. I'm happy to help there, and it's on our side also putting in place the Discord channels to help the community.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I mean, we will be sharing all the links and the presentation after this webinar. So there you have the TwinDev website. We will always be posting everything there that has to do with development for developers, all the resources. And you're always welcome to get in touch with us if you have any specific questions. Yeah, we have a few questions in the chat here. There was one from Ali about, do we have some governments that are interested in using Twin? I can just talk a little bit about Kenya. We have been trying out TLIP, which is powered by Twin from the very beginning there already with government agencies. For example, the Kenya Revenue Authority. And we've seen very good feedback. They have been very happy to use Twin. They have seen, for example, the potential to improve the tax collection processes to avoid misclassifications, misdeclarations, and have more transparency, visibility in the supply chain. And also in terms of time savings. For example, when we did the ecosystem of trust pilots with the UK government, the border agencies of the UK had access to crucial trade data several weeks before the goods were even at the border, whereas perhaps they would have to wait until the goods were at the border without that. Then I see here as well, there was a few comments from Christoph here. I think you can look into the chat for what he mentioned about the generalized challenge at Gaia X that they will present. Then there's also a question about if we can estimate how many transactions will be generated from Chigam. Jose, I think you're muted.
Yes, so I think short answer is it depends on the on each use case. So and of course there can be use cases where you want to tokenize, for instance, every document, or there can be use cases that are managing documents that are or should be tokenized that may imply more transactions. There can be use cases that they want to notarize, I would say, every event that happens in the system that implies more transactions. So it depends, and that is we are flexible on that regard. So the number of transactions, of course, then may have an impact in the cost, but also in the resources consumed. So there should be an equilibrium. So short answer is depends.
Yeah, thank you, Jose. And I think there's another question from Jörg, which is also related to that, which is how much trade flows in dollars in 2026. And I think that's also related to what you just said. It depends on the use case.
Yes.
So it is a little bit hard to say anything about that. Then there was a question here about Christoph, he was mentioning a footnote on IDSA protocols, which needs to be stabilized. As of July, DSP version 1.0.0 and DCP version 1.0.0 have been formally released as an Eclipsed Foundation standard. So this is as stable as the version 1.0.0 can get. They also have a reference implementation in EDC, which is Eclipse Data Space Connector version 0.14.
Okay. No, that's
anything to comment?
Thank you for the note. Yeah, that's good to know that they are actually stable in that regard, at least in version 1.0. But because also the experience showed that in the past, the IDSA protocol went through multiple versions, etc. But now it's fine. Christophe, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add something. Actually, this is really going to be stable because the idea of both protocols is to move it to an ISO standard. Eclipse Foundation is a so-called PAS submitter, public available specification submitter, which allows them to be to have standards approved with a public implementation and specification, which is what they have. And then they get a 6 month kind of approval period at ISO. So you won't be able to get any closer to an international standard on that. DSP might not be the best data space protocol, but it's many connectors will implement it, so you can extend your ecosystem with other connectors. And decentralized claims protocol would work currently for B2B interactions, which is what is Twin about. It's not optimized for humans to machine interactions, but I don't think that this is of concern to Twin at this level of development. So if you would use those protocols, you immediately get access to the about 200 other data space protocols like Catena-X, modulo trust framework issues. So that would be really a very an excellent interoperability message to the whole ecosystems. The European Union and China and Japan have invested around 4 billion euros in the last couple of years to go into that direction of data spaces. So claiming you are part of that and proving it by capitalizing on the same infrastructure, it will definitely help adoption tremendously. Yeah.
No, that's good to know, and yeah, we will look into those implementation and adding them to our data space connector for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank
and
you.
Congratulations to the architecture.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you. It's great to also see you in the webinars, Christophe. Now we have just a little bit of time left. There was a question from Hans about the transactions again. He said that he had a short look in Toyota Rebased and read something like 50K plus transactions per second. So he's wondering, is that the max, and will this potentially be a bottleneck?
Well, yeah, that's, I mean, this is the theoretical numbers, but the bottleneck, not necessarily, because you can always do data sharing, you can have layer 2 solutions, so we don't see the ledger as a bottleneck. And we in the EBSI pre-commercial procurement, we demonstrated that it is possible to have a data sharing capability to support scale as much as you can. Of course, you need additional resources, but there can be different techniques, also batching of transactions with Merkle trees, etc., that overcome those issues. So we don't see a bottleneck, but the numbers you see there, they are theoretical, and we have not been, or in Twin, we are not testing, I would say, the throughput of the IOTA ledger per se. We did it in the past in other projects, and we made it. It could be done as well, but we are not in that world on the Twin level at the moment.
Oh, sorry. No, I was the one who was still muted. Thank you very much, Jose. And I think it is time for us to wrap up here. We're 1 minute to 12. There were a few questions also about the Twin Foundation, how the other partners support, and what we have integrated in Kenya. I would recommend to check out the Twin website. We will be sharing it. There you can find a lot of articles that also our partners in the Twin Foundation have produced. You can see how they support, and also find out more about TLIP and our work with Twin in Kenya. Jose, Adrian, any last remarks from you?
Now, on my side, just to say that in the last slide, you have the additional materials. You will see a screencast with the freeway document sharing that with all the demo and the materials that are in a GitHub repository you can follow. And now, thank you everybody for attending, and I hope this is useful and gives you a good overview of where we are now and where we want to be.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Jose and Adrian, for your presentations. And we will be following up with an email where you can have the presentation and all the links. And we hope to stay in touch. Please be around us and stay tuned for the next steps.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much,
everyone.
everyone.
Also,
Thank
Jose,
you.
Adrian.
Bye-bye.